you ever touched a plant that just makes your skin sting? You probably got into stinging nettles. Or have you ever had the misfortune of getting into poison ivy? That can cause a terrible rash. But did you know that there's a plant that grows right next to those two plants that can cure both stinging nettles and poison ivy? It's called jewelweed. It's right here in front of me, this beautiful little orange flower here. Hi, I'm the Iowa Prairie Girl, and I'm in Rock Falls. We've had some rain, and you can hear that the creek is going fast behind me. I'm in Rock Falls, Iowa, Saragordo County. I'm here with my dog, Prairie Dog, and I want to talk to you about jewelweed. So stick around. Thanks for sticking around. I have moved away from the bridge as I was underneath the bridge and there was a waterfall there. It was a fun place to be, but obviously it was way too noisy. So you can see that I have found another patch of jewelweed right in front of me. Jewelweed likes wet places. You're going to find it along the side of a creek, a pond, even in a wet ditch, a moist edge of the moist woods. But it likes wet places, and we've had a lot of rain here in the last week here in Saragordo County. It is the last week in August 2021, and I'm kneeling in some wet spots here, and Prairie Dog has been enjoying all the water. So right in front of me you can see that this plant is they get to be about 2 to 5 feet tall, and this one here you can see is covered with beautiful little orange flowers. So the flower gets to be about 1.25 inches long. It's a funnel, and it has some lower lobes. The lower lobes are speckled with a reddish brown dots or stripes, and those are kind of like a landing pad for the bees that visit it. But one thing that visits jewelweed a lot is hummingbirds. Hummingbirds really love jewelweed. They use their long tongues to go all the way to the back of the funnel to get where the nectar is. Also, while they're there, the pollen is at the front of the flower, and so they get pollen on themselves and they go to the next plant and fertilize the next plant. If you find a jewelweed that has at the back of the funnel that has been chewed on, or there's a hole, that is from a bug or a bumblebee that doesn't have a long tongue and can't get back to the nectar, so they cheat and they chew a hole at the back of the funnel so that they can get to the nectar. So that's the flower. These are orange. There's also a yellow or a pale jewelweed. So if you find a yellow flower like the orange jewelweed, that is the yellow version. There is one here that I saw here at Rock Falls, just one. They're a little bit more rare and they prefer a little bit drier area. Now the next part of the plant is the stem and the leaf. Now the reason why it's called jewelweed is because the leaf, which is kind of they're also in the impatient family, and if you look at the stem and the leaf, they look exactly like what you would have in an impatient that you would plant in your around your yard that you would buy at a garden shop. So they're kind of a translucent pale green, but they I don't want to say resist, but the water will beat up on them. And that's where the name jewelweed comes from. There she goes. Jewelweed comes from when the water or the dew will beat up on the leaf and look like diamonds or jewels. And so that's where the name jewelweed comes from. It also kind of will beat up on the flower as well, the dew will, and that's a beautiful sight if you can find jewelweed in the morning with dew on it. So I mentioned the fact that jewelweed is a cure for poison ivy and for nettles, and they do often grow in the same place. Just right over here I found some nettles. What you can do if you get into nettles or into poison ivy, you take the stem and the leaves and you kind of crush them up until you have the moisture from the stem and the leaves, and then you would rub that on the area that you ran into the nettles or the poison ivy into, and that will alleviate the stinging or the itching. Now if you aren't quick enough or don't realize that you ran into poison ivy and you end up with a rash or some blisters, you can still use Jewelweed to get rid of the itch or the to help cure your rash. They make concoctions or tonics out of Jewelweed, again rubbing it together or actually boiling it and putting it into a salve, and again using that for poison ivy. I've read quite a bit of different uses for Jewelweed. They mostly all pertain to the treatment of rashes or skin irritations. It's been used for athlete's foot. Prairie, you need to go. Go run. Go on. So they use it for things like fungi, athlete's foot. I actually read that they take a whole bunch of Jewelweed stems and leaves, boil it down, put it into a salve, and then they use it for piles. Now, if you're not old enough to know what piles are, that's hemorrhoids. So anything that needs some anti-inflammatory treatment to it, they would use that for. The other cool thing, or other name for Jewelweed, is touch-me-not or snapweed, and that has to do with the seed pod. So each of these flowers will develop into a seed pod, and I have a picture that I'll show you of a seed pod. It's a long, slender pod, and as that pod dries, it dries up and it gets kind of tight, and it doesn't take much for that pod to pop. It could be an animal or a human brushing against it. It could be wind. But a lot of kids, parents teach their kids about Jewelweed and snapweed or touch-me-not, and it's really fun if you find a dried up pod and you kind of capture it in your hands. It'll pop in your hands like a toy. Inside of those pods are little seeds. Jewelweed is an annual, and it spreads by those seeds, and so when that pod pops open, it can spread those seeds 3 to 4 feet, and that's where the next plant will grow from those seeds. Now those seeds are rather tasty. I read that they taste like walnuts, so I found here a pod and snapped it open in my hand. It's kind of hard. It's almost like catching a firefly. You got to catch it in your hands and have it pop open in your hand, and then you have the little seeds, and I tasted them, and they were tasty. They did taste like walnuts. They're very small, and you would have to catch a lot of Jewelweed seeds to sustain yourself on Jewelweed seeds, but they were tasty, and I would eat them again. What else do I know about Jewelweed? Oh, I wanted to talk about the flower as well. It dangles, and so the flower has a long stem or a petiole, and it dangles. Dangles off, kind of horizontal when you see them off the plant. It's a horizontal flower that dangles down. And so another name for Jewelweed can also be ear loop, or the reference to it being an earring. Another name for Jewelweed is silverleaf, and that again has to do with the leaf. The leaf, as you can see, are kind of oval shaped. They are toothed, and when they get wet, they do kind of almost become a silvery color. They do hold off or resist. They're water resistant, so that's the Jewelweed or the silverleaf. And then again, I referenced that it looks like an earring, so it's called an ear jewel. I guess that's all I really know about Jewelweed. It does bloom from July through September here in North Iowa. Again, you're going to find it in the wet areas, and it's an awful fun plant to show to kids or to anybody, because it is kind of fun to snap open a Jewelweed pod in your hands. Okay, well, this is the Iowa Prairie Girl, and I got my prairie dog right here. She's ready to go running a little bit. Thanks for watching my video about Jewelweed. Please feel free to share it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and it is almost Labor Day. We still have got some time left in the summer. Enjoy some fall flowers, and I hope that you get out and see the wonderful. Thanks for watching.